I'm Katie Frisch. I'm a member of the Aspen School District Board of Education and just helping to moderate this session. Welcome to the Colorado Western Slope College Fair 2021. This session is called The Road Ahead for grades 9 and 10. And it's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to just talk about how to get started in this process. We have three individuals here. From the College of Wooster, April Gamble. From Clarkson University, we have Carrie LaBarre, and from Champlain College, we have Sam Mahler. So welcome, everyone. And I will hand it over to April to begin.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. If you're not muted, will you go ahead and mute yourself just so we don't get any echoes on this? And I am going to talk with you. Carrie and Sam and I are each going to talk for 8 to 10 minutes. And then we're going to go ahead and answer your questions. And I just want to remind you that there's not a question that's too big or too small to ask us, whether you're asking questions about sort of really large global questions about campus climate, what it's like to be in college, what that first year experience is like, to smaller questions about, what's the difference between D3, D2, and D1 sports. We're happy to try and tackle all of your questions. And I know that Carrie and Sam and I are going to share our contact information. So afterwards, if you have any questions that you'd rather ask, on an individual level, we're also willing to help. So again, my name's April. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I just want to mention that something that you will hear a lot when you start looking at colleges is that colleges are aware that gender identity is something that students and families are interested in talking about and interested in exploring. So again, I'm April. I use she, her, and hers. One of the perspectives I want to offer you today, I'm definitely talking as a college representative, but I am also a parent of 2 kids who are in college, a first year and a second year. So I've just gone through the college search process myself as a parent. And that's been really interesting to think about. I also went through the college search process with my kids as we were sort of moving into this both virtual and kind of in-person world. And so one thing I want to say right up front is that there's a lot of exploring and thinking that you can do about colleges virtually now. There are opportunities to sit in on a concert. There are opportunities to watch, a field hockey game. There are opportunities for all the sorts of panels, whether they're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, talking about various majors. So your students, or if you're a student or if you're a family member, there are lots of opportunities that maybe weren't there 3 or 4 years ago in terms of starting to explore. But the point I wanted to talk about today really is that financial and merit aid, the affordability piece, because I think for most families, no matter where you are, the sticker price for college is really sort of, it's shocking and it's intimidating, and it's something that, it's best to work through some of those details now so that as you're exploring college, you're realistically looking at places that you're going to be able to afford, right? Many students do have some debt when they graduate from college. And I think a good idea for a family is to think about what good debt means. What does reasonable debt mean to your family? So looking at colleges and figuring out the difference between a college that meets full need, a college that provides merit aid, a college that has neither of those things. There are a lot of details and a lot of kind of specifics that you'll need to think through. And so actually, I'm going to hold up a recommendation, and I'll put this in the chat too. And I'm sorry, it's a great book by Ron Lieber. Ron Lieber is a columnist with the New York Times. He's actually a financial columnist with the New York Times. And he himself, as a parent, is starting to go through the college search process. And he was sort of mystified, even as a financial planner and an expert in financial, matters. What do all of these phrases mean, right? What does full need mean? What does merit aid mean? Why do some colleges have it and others don't? And so in his book, he really goes through a lot of, he looks at a lot of different colleges, specifically lots of private liberal arts colleges, and talks about how those colleges work with families to make college more affordable. So his book is called The Price You Pay for College. And again, he's literally talking about the price tag you pay for college, as well as what, as a family, what are the values that you're willing to pay for as you send your child off to college. So again, my 2 points today, exploring that virtual world. You've got a window into so many things that weren't available a few years ago. That's hopefully the silver lining from this pandemic. And then 2, to start really thinking about financial aid, merit aid, and affordability. What's going to be possible. Your college counselors or your high school counselors are going to have information for you. There are also there are quite a few free resources out there for families that college counselors can actually point you to talk about affordability for college. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. That was 7 minutes. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. And I'll put the name of Ron Lieber's new book in the chat so that folks can access that. It's a book that I was able to get in person, but you can also probably get it free from your public library. So thanks so much. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, April. Again, I forgot to mention in the beginning, the format of this is each colleges will speak for 10 minutes and then we'll have a 15-minute Q&A. So everyone get your questions ready and we'll go over that process when we get there. So Carrie, off to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, April, for tackling the big one right out the gate, talking about financial aid. I appreciate it. And to piggyback off it, I want to give you all a tidbit of advice when it comes to financial aid. On every college's website, because this is a federal regulation, there is something called a net price calculator, also known as the NPC. Once you get to junior year, you really should start taking a look at those and seeing what exactly will possibly that bill look like. What is that first year price tag really going to be? Because like April said, it can be a bit of a sticker shock, but not everybody pays that sticker price. So this is a great way to really figure out, hey, what am I really looking at? So keep that in mind for a couple of years down the road, the net price calculator. So my name is Carrie, and I come from Clarkson University, which is a little bit different than most universities in the country, that we are not a liberal arts college. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is for any students on this call, for down the road, if you are thinking, I would like to get a STEM education, I would like to go into engineering, I want to go into some of the hard sciences, I want to go into the business world, how do I get there and how do I get prepared? So with students that I'm looking at, and I know plenty of other STEM universities are looking at the same, our big focus on looking at applications is, well, what math and what science courses have you taken? It is very important that you continue to take those upper level math courses and science courses while you're in school. And right now in grades 9 and 10, this is a great time to get that foundation started to make sure you're on that track to be able to get into a STEM or a technical university. So you'll want to be taking as much math as possible. I'm not saying you need to double up on math at all, especially if it's maybe not your favorite subject, it's okay. So what I want to see by the time you get through grade 10 is at least having geometry, because that will set you up to be able to have at least pre-calculus by the time you're in grade 12, which is huge for a STEM education. You also want to make sure that you are taking biology, you are taking chemistry, and you are taking at least 1 year of physics. Physics is going to be huge if you are looking at a STEM education. It is one of the first things that us in the admissions world are going to be looking for on your college application down the road. So making sure, again, that you're grabbing chemistry, you're grabbing physics, and that will put you in line to make sure that you have pre-calc down the road as well. And the reason we want you to have what we call the big three down the road is because pretty much that will be your first year of university. It will be a Calc 1, a Chem 1, and a Physics 1. So on our end, we're just trying to make sure that you are prepared to walk in and be successful that first year of college. We don't want it to be a surprise to you. So this is a great way to make sure that you feel confident and ready walking onto that campus knowing, hey, I'm a mechanical engineering student and I can do this because I'm prepared. So every time I get to speak with younger students, I always emphasize, make sure you're taking a lot of math and a lot of science. Language courses for STEM schools, I'll be honest with you, do you need it up to grade 12 for us? No, because it's not something we're really looking at. Do we appreciate seeing students continue on and taking a language course? Yes, we do. We definitely appreciate seeing it. It does make your application stand out. But I also understand that some students, you're just not great with taking a Spanish course or a French course or an Italian course. So if you're worried that, oh, is this going to hurt my application? Please reach out to that colleges that you're looking for. If you have a list of 10, quickly send an email to their admissions offices and say, hey, I'm thinking about maybe dropping Spanish my junior year. Is that okay? We're going to give you the answer. We want you to ask us so we can tell you, yes, these are the courses we're looking for. You're on the right track, or don't know if that's a good idea. You might really want to think about it. So make sure you reach out to us and you ask us, because we are here as a resource for you. Even right now in grade 9 and 10, please feel free to email us and ask us to make sure you're on the correct road for the universities that you're definitely looking at, or maybe potentially that career path that you're looking at. So again, the big three, it's going to be your freshman year. We also really want to see challenging courses your senior year. We are going to weigh those APs and college level courses you get to take at a higher level than we do kind of that intro college prep. So if you can take at least one AP, if your school offers a couple more and you have room and you feel confident, please know that taking an AP does go a long way in the admissions process down the road. So right now, maybe you want to meet with your college counselors and the counseling office in general at your high school and make sure, okay, so when I enter junior year, will there be room for me to try an AP and see if they can put that into your schedule? Is there room in grade 12, my senior year, to be able to push in a couple more? Great, perfect, because that's what's going to set your application apart. So it is a lot of work right now in grade 9 and grade 10, just to make sure that you do have those prereqs to look at a STEM education. And I know it's a lot to think about. I have a nephew that is in grade 11 and we are going through this college process. And it's a lot. It's definitely a lot because none of us do anything the same, which can also make it very tricky. So that's my next point, is know that every university, unfortunately, we do not have the same deadlines. Some of us do not use the same application. Some of us are looking for totally separate essays that are on the Common App, or we might have our own supplementals. Some of us have early action. Early action means that you can apply for an earlier deadline, but it's not binding. So you can apply to as many early action colleges as you want to. Some of us do not have early action. We have early decision with a totally different deadline. And that means that it is binding if you're admitted to an early decision university. So that means if you are admitted to that one, they expect you to be there for your first year. So it can take a lot. A lot of times, I'll be honest, when I look at early decision, it's athletes, it's my Division I hockey players that are applying early decision. It's students who know they want to play for a particular coach on my campus that are applying early decision. And then there's regular decision, which typically has a later deadline and is not binding whatsoever. You just find out a little bit later. So make sure, my best advice to you, and this is going to sound a little silly, is either keep a notebook of all the colleges you start looking at, an Excel sheet if you'd like to, you want to color code it, whatever you'd like to do. But it's just to kind of keep everything in order, because what I have as a deadline at Clarkson is not what April's going to have at Wooster, and it's not what Sam's going to have at Champlain. And Sam and I's universities are 2 hours apart, and our deadlines are not alike at all. So it can be a little tricky. And then add in the scholarship deadlines on top of that. And it's like, whoa, everybody has a different deadline. So to make sure that you keep it written down, keep it organized, because as soon as you start everything organized, it just makes it so much easier down the road. And then when you start getting those acceptances, you'll know what's going on and it'll make it so much easier for you. So right now, that's what I would start thinking about, making sure your schedule is where it needs to be, and start planning to have that special notebook, that college notebook, or a special Excel sheet. Start the research now if you'd like to, and kind of plug in things you're looking for. Take a look at a larger school, take a look at a smaller school, do pros and cons list, which is where probably a notebook comes in handy. Do some pros and cons list and see what's going on, just to make sure you're on the right track of what you're looking for. And what April said, hey, there's virtual options now. It makes it so much easier for you to be able to take a peek at a variety of different colleges and universities out there, because you don't physically have to go just yet. So you can start looking and doing a couple virtual open houses or a couple academic sessions or student panels right now if you wanted to, just to be able to kind of get that insider information, see if there's any tips from current students that they wish they would have known when they were back in your shoes a couple of years ago. So yes, virtual option, start thinking about your schedule, get that notebook ready so that you're organized. So when the college process starts, you know every deadline and you won't miss it. You won't miss a scholarship opportunity and you won't miss getting your application in on time. I know that was a lot of information at one time, but I hope it was worth it for you guys. I will go over it again in the chat. If you need me to do some bullet points, please let me know. And with that, I think my time is wrapped up and now it's Sam's turn.
Thanks, Carrie. You actually touched on pretty much perfectly the direction I was going to go. And you started talking about what it's like to visit schools, be it virtually or in person, to start getting that insider information and understanding what schools are like and what the application process is like. And the truth is, schools are really different. Between Clarkson, Champlain, and the College of Wooster here, we have 3 schools which could not be less similar if they tried, which is a really good thing, because it means that out there is always a good school for every student in this country, which is a really good thing. And I know it might seem early and a little bit scary for a lot of you, because for some of you, you're only a month or 2 into your freshman year of high school, but it's really not too early to start looking at these schools and learning about what makes a school unique. Carrie already talked a little bit about, the difference between a liberal arts education and, that STEM education, and understanding the difference in what works for some students doesn't work for others. But there are a lot of other factors that should be considered in the college application process and making that decision for yourself. One of the most important things is the same rule as real estate. It's understanding location, location, location. The school that works for a student that, wants to be in the middle of a major city like DC, Boston, or LA isn't the same sort of student that wants to end up at a small school in the Northeast in the woods. Those are 2 very different energies and very different environments for your education. And while you may think you know what you're looking for, I highly recommend looking at the school that it's the polar opposite of what you think you may like. So you can then, with full authority say, okay, you know what? A large state school isn't for me. That's not the environment I'm looking for. But because you may think that's not going to work for you, but sometimes students walk onto those campuses and they feel a little overwhelmed in the best way, that they're able to go there and really find their home. Conversely, students that think they're looking for a large state school and really want that big feel walk into a lecture hall and can feel overwhelmed with 400 students standing next to them. So it's also good to make sure you're checking those small schools that give you that small, student to faculty ratio where you're really able to connect with your faculty advisor and you're sitting in small circles, getting to know a student. And getting to know the faculty. It's also really important, as I said, to understand the difference between a rural school, an urban school, and a suburban school. Understanding, do I want to be in a place where, there's a million things happening, which is a great thing because it means there's a million things happening. But on the downside, it means you're always going to have an activity to do and you're always going to be getting pulled in 1,000 directions. Or do you want to have that tight-knit campus feel that often comes from going to a school that's a little more out there, isolated away from that big city energy, where the campus borders sort of bleed into the surrounding city around it? So understanding that dynamic is really important for colleges. And on that topic, it is all about learning to read that college. So understanding, where your interests lie, where the rest of the school lies, and where you fall in that process, and making sure it works for you. It's also important to make sure in the college process that you're looking at schools that are not only within your financial region and target, but also within your academic target. It's easy to picture yourself going to one of the largest schools and best schools in the country by some metrics, but it's also important to understand that different colleges have a whole lot of different things they're able to offer. If you're looking to further your degree after college and go to a school that has a strong grad program, it's important to work with your counselor to make sure you're looking for schools that are offering large grad programs and pathways directly to those. If you're looking for a school, it's going to make sure you can get set up and upon graduation, get into a job in the field you want to be in, you should be looking at schools that really put a heavy emphasis on career placement for those students. It's a whole lot of variables to keep in mind, and I know we only have so many minutes to talk about them, so I won't try to lay them all out in this short amount of time. Otherwise, I think all of our heads would explode. But understanding all the small, unique things that make a school itself is really important to track. Sports are also in that same vein. Some students, you're looking for a school that has D1 hockey or any athletics program. Other schools and other students don't have any athletics programs beyond the club and recreational level. And that creates a very good environment for students who are looking to sort of escape a sports-centric atmosphere. So understanding those differences and what you're looking for really just plays an integral role in the college application process. We've already talked a lot about the application process, especially for freshmen and sophomores, so I will avoid trying to talk too much more about that. But on there is one thing that's really important, and that's understanding your essay. I know the essay is, again, one of those things that seems a little far off, but the truth about the college essay is that you're writing something that's your passion. And so understanding what your passion is an important aspect of the college application process. I mean this in the nicest way, but as a college, we don't care what your passion is. We care that you care what your passion is. And so if you can identify the thing that makes you the most excited in the world and the thing that makes you want to wake up every morning, and you determine it as early as your freshman year, that's perfect. Because it means, well, you still have a ways to go before you write your essay. You don't have so long to think about what the topic of your essay is going to be. It's really, as I'm sure my colleagues on this call will agree with me on, all about highlighting what your interests are and what the things that make you tick are. Because as a college, we're all looking for students that have their passions and are excited by the things that make them excited. And that's one of the most important things about creating a college class and finding yourself in a healthy college environment, is making sure you're in a school that meets those needs, as we've highlighted before. So taking your essay topic and what you think you're probably going to be passionate about and looking for that in a school is of the utmost importance. And again, making sure whatever schools you're looking at have your interests in mind. If you want to do a cappella and the school has no a cappella groups, that's going to be a big issue. So making sure you're looking for those things that aren't necessarily always education-based, but really still important to discovering the culture of the school is just one of the most important parts of the college process, and making sure you're taking the time to dig into that information and using that book that Carrie mentioned to make sure you're keeping notes of all those things. Include the little stuff in there too, because when you're spending up to 4 years on a college campus, it's really important to make sure that they cater to those little things that matter to you, because that's going to be a place you're going to want to call home, not only for your 4 years of school, but beyond. You want to look back on it fondly and not just a place you had to slog through for 4 years to get your education. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie. I listen to myself talk for a living, so listening any longer can drive me a little insane. So thank you very much.
Thank you, all three. I think that was a great overview. Let's do this. On Zoom at the bottom, there's a reactions button. And if you click on that, you can raise your hand to ask a question. And I'll be trying to see who's scrolling through the participants and calling on people. But if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. In the meantime, I'm going to kick it off with one question, which is, wow, I mean, there's so much that you guys talked about. It's overwhelming, the amount of things to think about as you're going through this process, especially when you're just starting in 9th and 10th grade. Now, could you maybe each give the top 2 or 3 things that you think are the things to start at right now, like where to begin, whether it's narrowing down or thinking about financial aid, or what's important to be doing now for these 9th and 10th graders?
I'll go ahead and start. And I'm just going to say, I think the most important thing to do right now is to not stress out about this search, to think about it as a little bit of exploration, adventure. In college, you're going to be doing research, right? That's one of the things you do in college. So think about this as a sort of small ongoing research project, but you have plenty of time. So my advice again is to sort of try to tone down the stress, to realize that you have resources at your schools, you have resources in your community to help you think about college. To think about it as sort of a small research project. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that, is to try to find a way to not have this be burdensome, but have it be sort of a pleasure in a way. One thing I know I hear from families that they do is maybe they're traveling to visit family somewhere else on a trip. Maybe they're, they have family in another state or another city. If you're visiting, just go walk by a college campus, see what it looks like, see what it feels like, and maybe that's a nice way to get started.
I think it's great advice. I'm going to follow suit with, right now, it's a journey and it's your journey. So you get to make it whatever you want this journey to be. If you want to start now and you want to get a list going and you feel like, I want to research all of these universities, go for it. Now, if you're a student who's like, oh, this is a bit much for me right now, I don't think I'm ready, that's okay too. Your journey can maybe not start until junior year. So please make it your own, be at your own pace. Because just because your classmates may be running around looking at a bunch of universities when they're sophomores doesn't mean you need to. So it's totally okay to take your time, build that list starting up, and then go from there. Pop on a couple of virtual events if you're nervous about walking on a college campus just yet, because there is a bit of anonymity there. Students can't see you if you're in a webinar. So it's a great way maybe to peek in and nobody knows that you're only in grade 9 or only in grade 10. And you can get a little bit more information from the students that are there, from faculty that are there, that might get those wheels turning a little bit and then get you fired up for junior and senior year. So pop on some of our virtual events, do not stress about it, and take your time and make this your own journey. Make it your thing. This is your time and your college experience. Make sure it's what you are looking for.
I absolutely want to reiterate what both my colleagues said, but I also want to add on to it that understanding that our job on our side of the table is to help you is really important. And understanding that we're here to make a resource for you no matter where you are in the college process. I can attest to the fact that I am sure every single person who has worked in our jobs has answered questions as broad as, do you have Greek life, to as narrow as asking a question about a specific job in a specific research part of the school with a specific faculty member. We are happy to help you at every and any step of the way. And we are here to provide support to you, no matter if you are a freshman or if you're even a transfer student coming in. It doesn't matter where in the process you are, we're here to help. And though we can seem a little intimidating, our job is to be as unassuming as possible and as eager to help as we can. So really making sure that when you're ready, you're taking advantage of the admissions counselors and the Office of Admissions and everyone else at any college you're interested in is a really important step.
Great, thank you. That was wonderful and a very good summary. I have no hands up in the nobody has raised their hand. So I would love a question from someone. We have about another 15 minutes of this session. You can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand. Parents or students as well. There are definitely some parents on the call.
I'm going to just chime in with something in terms of, the idea for students that this is a part of your journey, but it's also a family journey too, right? I just want to acknowledge that for 9th and 10th graders, this is something that you do with the support, hopefully of your family, the support of your college counselor. In the end, sometimes it's not the student who's able to decide exactly where they want to go to college, right? Because it has to do also with a family's values, the family's ability to pay, And so it's a really interesting balancing act, I think, for families. Parents, you want to give your students as much autonomy as they can have, but you also just, you have to respect the fact that this is a decision that often adults are making with their kids. And that balancing act can be tricky, it can be tense sometimes, but I think it's, it's something you'll do at some level together.
Questions? I thought I just saw a hand go up. Now I can't find it. Oh. So actually.
So Keith has a question. Keith Hemst.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm new at this moderating stuff. So Keith, can you unmute yourself or do I need to do that for you?
I believe I just did.
Oh,
If you can
perfect.
Hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, first of all, for being here on a Sunday morning. I was just curious. I've heard lots about, testing optional becoming a trend, a growing trend. What is the status of testing and how do you see it playing out in the future?
I think for a lot of institutions, testing, especially over the past couple of years, for obvious reasons there, is becoming less and less of a requirement. And obviously it's very dependent on the schools. So I only have the authority to speak about Champlain here for obvious reasons, but I can tell you that, we went test optional prior to the pandemic, and it's a change we're not expecting to go back because, we always like to joke in our office that we know most students aren't morning people, so asking them to take a test at 7:30 in the morning isn't going to produce the best results. But in reality, we really do understand that, 1 5-hour test shouldn't determine your college process when we have 4 years of information we're able to look at in our field and use that to make an informed decision on the student, as well as all the other information they choose to provide in the application. So recognizing the fact that tests are, a much shorter window that we have to look at than all the other information that students choose to provide with us when they submit their application is becoming a more and more common trend in admissions. And really, with some reversion to the mean as the pandemic ends, I think reasonably talking at the macro level over the next, 5 years or so, we're going to continue to see schools drop tests one by one as a requirement.
I'll just add on quickly, we've been test optional too since before the pandemic, but what I've noticed is there are quite a few local scholarships and outside scholarships that are still asking for test scores. So, I think most students end up taking SAT, ACT at least once or twice during their high school career. And just if you're looking at outside scholarships, for example, from our area, we have some 4-H scholarships that kids apply for. They are still asking for test scores. So just, again, it's sort of a complicated landscape, but I totally agree, with what Sam said. I think we're heading towards more and more colleges being test optional. That may depend. Large publics may have different rules and regulations if those are handled by state legislature, though.
And I know we, a little bit opposite, we went test optional because of the pandemic, which is very exciting for me because I'm not pro-test. And generally at Clarkson, we read holistically. So really the SAT, ACT didn't really play a major role in how we decided on an application. It did for the honors program, but not specifically for us. So we were really excited as admissions counselors to get rid of it. We are not using it again next year. And I truly believe that it will be gone for good at Clarkson. And I foresee that happening at a lot of other STEM universities as well. I think we're all on the same page that one Saturday morning does not tell us enough about a student at all, especially because there are a lot of disparities with the SAT. So for example, I work with students in the state of Connecticut, where they mandatory have to take the SAT. It is their state exam. So they all sit down, they have prep courses for it. They get to take it during school hours even. Whereas then I have students next door in Rhode Island, or I have you guys in Colorado, and it's not that way at all. So you have to do the studying on your own. You're buying the books, you're doing the online courses. So there tends to be a disparity in the scores, and it's not the student's fault. So already there's some uneasiness when I look at the scores. So I do see it going by the wayside pretty soon as well.
So we have a question about earlier, it was mentioned that you can find access to seminars to virtually attend for or information on the schools. Could you maybe speak to how a student can go about finding that?
Yeah, Sam and Carrie, I think it's probably the same for all of us. If you go to the sort of general admissions page and search under virtual visits, and again, if you can't find them, go to find your admissions counselor. So if you're from Colorado, you would email Sam. You know, you can find us, find a counselor. As Sam said, we're here to help, and so we can help you identify virtual events that would be open to you.
We have a question from Claire in Mesa Valley. Claire, you can. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just had a question on how would you suggest going about finding the best college for you?
That is a particularly loaded question, but I think the first step in a lot of this is after your self-reflection, where you think, you know, maybe you have an idea of what in general you may look for, go to your counselor, go to all the resources you have, because those are people that do know you, and say, you know, I think X, Y, and Z might interest me. You know, maybe you're saying, I know I really want to study psychology, and I think I want to be on the West Coast, and I really want to have the ability to, you know, sail in my free time. Just start off with like 3 pieces of information that you can give to your counselor and run with it from there. They are a really good resource to at least start opening those doors for you, because their job is to know, our job is to know one school really well. Their job is to know every school pretty well. So they are there to be able to help and provide that information and say, well, based off of what you said, I think X, Y, and Z would be a really good place to start looking. And then after you have some conversations, attend an in-person or virtual event at that school, you'll be able to really quickly say, this is for me, or not so much, I think I want to look in a different direction. And those initial steps, it's sort of like you've got the college search process is kind of like having a rock at the top of the hill. It's going to take a little bit of effort to push it, to start it rolling down. But once it starts rolling, all that information is really going to compile on itself, and you're going to solve it as the rock continues to roll with very little energy that you need to input.
I'm going to share my personal college experience with you, because I think grade 9, grade 10 is a great time for you guys to hear this story, and you gals to hear this story. I had my heart set on, I'm not going to name the college because they're great, and I don't want anybody to think I'm saying anything negative about them, but they are a Big 10, literally, they're one of the Big 10. And I thought, man, that's my college. I'm going there. I'm so excited. I'm so amped. That's all I ever talked about. I'm going to this college, going to this college, going to this college. Wouldn't even look at anybody else. That was problem number 1. Don't do that. Have a list. Make sure you're looking at least 5 is my advice. My parents were like, all right, you won't stop talking about it. Let's go take a peek. So we got in the car and we drove 8 hours to this college, because back in the day, this was 2002, and you pretty much were driving because you had to handwrite all of the applications. So we wanted to make sure this one was it. So we get there, and little Carrie would not get out of the car for the tour. She wouldn't do it. I knew right away. I just knew. I was like, this is not what I thought it was. Yeah, we can go home now. My poor parents were like, yeah, all right, we can go home now. We just drove 8 hours, but yeah, we can go home now. So it's one of those where I really, really thought on paper, this was the university I was supposed to go to. I really, truly did. I felt it deep in my bones. But then when I got there, I realized this is not the university I'm supposed to go to. This isn't it. And then we started looking at smaller I ended up at Clarkson University, which PS was not on my list at all. Was not on my list. I was like, small university, rural, no. And I loved it. So you really, the visit, the feeling, getting the vibe of that university is so important in helping make your decision. Eavesdropping on current students. I know we tell you not to eavesdrop, but you need to eavesdrop on current students because you need to make sure they're your people. You're going to live there for 4 years. These are going to be lifelong friends you're making. So just to make sure these are people I want in my life, because they are. I mean, I have been in so many weddings. They have been in mine. We've been everywhere. These are people you're going to know the rest of your life. We still all get together. So you want to make sure that this is the campus where you're going to find those people. I still love that Big Ten university. I think it's great. It just wasn't the university for me. So just make sure you go and check it out, because again, it can look great on paper, but it may not have that feeling that you're looking for.
Okay, any other questions? We have, about 3 minutes. If somebody else has another. Come on, someone step up. Okay, well, any final comments from our participants here? April, Sam, Claire, or Carrie? All right, well, oh, there we go.
One last quick question that can be answered very quickly. What is the trend in terms of how many colleges do kids apply to these days? I mean, I applied to one, but I know that's not how it works anymore.
I would say it really depends on the high school you're coming from. There are actually high schools that limit the number of applications kids can apply to. I would say sort of the 4 to 8 is what we're seeing most, and that gives kids to figure out, good financial fit, good fit in lots of other ways.
I agree with April. It's generally on the higher end. Closer to 10 is what I have at least noticed. Here on the East Coast, it's very popular to get up there sometimes in double digits, which is great. But I'm going to give you a little piece of advice on that. Just a little heads up, I guess. The more colleges you apply to, the more confusing it's going to get down the road. Just because then you're being pulled in 8 million different directions. Everybody has a different deadline. They may not even be in the same wheelhouse, atmosphere wise, location wise. So instead of applying to 17, I'd get it down to 10. Yeah, so I wouldn't go over. I think 13 would be where you should probably limit it to be honest. And then that way, at least you can kind of keep it streamlined.
Well, great. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great session. I believe this has been recorded. So I think there will be access later on if you have friends or family members that would like to hear it later. We got a big day ahead of us, so hopefully everyone will enjoy the next couple of hours, and then we have another big session at 1 o'clock or 1:15, I believe. So thank you all. Thank you to Carrie Clarkson, from April from College of Wooster, and Sam from Champlain. Really appreciate your time. And there's a couple of, in the chat, a couple of emails that are going forward for contact information for our presenters. So please use them as a resource, especially if they're offering. Hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.